Hi there, third graders. This is Mr. Hanson, and I'm here to do a little read aloud with you. I'm going to read you a favorite book of mine. It's called Lost and Found by Oliver Jeffers. It's a book by Philomel Books, and it's about a boy and a penguin, as you can see from the cover. And they are currently floating in an umbrella. And you'll notice in the background that they're floating probably by an iceberg, so it tells me that it's probably going to be pretty cold there. This is a story about friendship, and it's also a story about how people communicate with each other. So I want you to be thinking about that as we get started today. Let's get reading. Okay, so here we go. Lost and Found. There's a suitcase. Once there was a boy who found a penguin at his door. The boy didn't know where it had come from, but it began to follow him everywhere. The penguin looked sad, and the boy thought it must be lost. So the boy decided to help the penguin find its way home. He checked in the lost and found office, but no one was missing a penguin. He asked some birds if they knew where the penguin came from, but they ignored him. Some birds are like that. The boy asked his duck, but the duck floated away. He didn't know either. That night, the boy couldn't sleep for disappointment. He wanted to help the penguin, but he wasn't sure how. The next morning, he discovered that penguins come from the South Pole. But how could he get there? He's reading a book called Where Penguins Come From. He ran down to the harbor and asked a big ship to take them to the South Pole. But his voice was much too small to be heard over the ship's horn. There's him right there. Together, the boy decided he and the penguin would row to the South Pole. So the boy took his rowboat out and tested it for size and strength. He told stories to the penguin to help pass the time, but then they packed everything they would need and pushed the rowboat out to sea. They rowed south for many days and many nights. There were lots of time for stories, and the penguin listened to everyone, so the boy would always tell another. They floated through good weather and bad. Look at that lightning bolt there. When the waves were as big as mountains. I love that description. Big as mountains. Until they finally came to the South Pole. The boy was delighted, but the penguin said nothing. Suddenly, it looked sad again as the boy helped it out of the boat. I like this picture here, kind of tells me a little bit also. Then the boy said goodbye and floated away. When he looked back, the penguin was still there, but it looked sadder than ever. It felt strange for the boy to be on his own. There was no point telling stories now, because there was no one to listen except the wind and the waves. Instead, he just thought. And the more he thought, the more he realized he had made a big mistake. The penguin hadn't been lost, it had just been lonely. Quickly, he turned the boat around and rowed back to the South Pole as fast as he could. At last, he reached the pole again. But where was the penguin? The boy searched and searched, but he was nowhere to be found. Sadly, the boy set off for home. But then, the boy saw something in the water ahead of him. Closer and closer he got until he, until he could see the penguin. And so the boy and his friend went home together, talking of wonderful things all the way. Okay, so what a great story, right? This boy and this penguin. Um, I really love this story because of what it tells us about friendship and what it can also teach us about how we communicate with others. I want you to be thinking today about two things. One, how did it feel when the boy didn't have his friend there? And how did it feel for the penguin when the boy was finally gone? Um, and I also want you to think a little bit about, is there anything the boy or the penguin could have done in the beginning that maybe would have saved them that whole trek to the South Pole? Could they have maybe communicated differently in the very beginning that would have saved the whole thing? But then again, we wouldn't have had this cool story with all these great pictures. So be thinking about that while you're working today.